Welcome to the Poetry Box Live. I'm Shawn Aveningo-Sanders, and we're so happy that you could join us for a little poetry today. For those of you who may be tuning in for the first time, my husband Robert and I run an independent press here in Portland, Oregon, known as the Poetry Box. And we publish around 30 poetry books per year, plus our annual Journal of Poetry and Art, the Poeming Pigeon. To help support all of our authors, to reach a broader audience, we host the Poetry Box Live on the second Saturday of each month. And for today's show, we have three fantastic poets who will be reading from their new books. Today's featured poets include Lauri Cruver Cherian, who is joining us from Gig Harbor, Washington. We have Peter Kaufmann reading all the way from Alaska, and Leanne Grabel, who will be joining us from here in Portland, Oregon. And yesterday, when I checked the registration list, it looked like we had audience members coming from Arizona, California, Hawaii, Idaho, Maine, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, New York, Oregon, South Carolina, Texas, Washington, and also from Ireland, Mexico, and Vietnam. So this is truly a global event, and I'm so happy that Zoom allows us to do this. So thanks for joining us today. So here we go. Let's get started with our first featured reader, Lauri Cruver Cherian, author of Poems of the Point, which is her tribute to growing up in Gig Harbor, Washington. Lauri grew up in Gig Harbor, but has lived on the South Texas coast for the last 3 decades. With her master's degree in language acquisition education and a bachelor's degree in bilingual education, Lauri has taught English as a second language for children and adults for 25 years and is the recipient of several Teacher of the Year awards. Besides returning to the beach whenever she gets the chance, Lauri enjoys acting in community theater, singing, playing the piano, traveling, and writing short stories and poetry. Please welcome Lauri Cruver Cherian.
Thank you all. I wish I could see all of you all at the same time. Can you hear me okay? Are we good? All right. First of all, I want to thank Shawn and Robert for getting this hot off the press. It's just been so exciting, especially coming home to Gig Harbor this week after my 40th reunion and reconnecting with kids that grew up on the beach with me. It was very magical, very special. So I'm going to start with coming home. For 40 years, I've been driving home from Texas and also Tri-Cities area. And when my tires hit the Tacoma Narrows bridges, I'm almost home. And the bay sparkles and tantalizes and says, come on down that road. And then I'm finally home. So starting out with coming home. I am not home until I see the Tacoma Narrows bridges looming dark against the sky, suspended securely, reaching across the strait connecting Tacoma to Gig Harbor. I am not home until I see Anderson's store to the right and Point Fosdick to the left, memories of childhood bike rides and adventures awarded with a 20-cent Snickers bar. I am not home until I see Mrs. Lewison's farm, overgrown and wild, memories of visits, all in Norwegian. Her wrinkled, ruddy face and long, faded blonde braid wound round her head like a Norse crown. I am not home until I see forests dense with fir and pine, pointing to the cloud-filled sky. Point Fosdick leading me uphill and down and around a corner until finally the dead end is in sight and I am home. The bay greets me with sparkling winks, enticing me to turn down the last steep hill past the white name signs with fewer familiar and more unfamiliar names until I see my own father's name and the memories wash over me. Unraked autumn leaves crunching underfoot, sprinting up the hill breathless to catch the morning bus, freshly plucked Italian plums tucked in my pocket, a wrinkled brown lunch bag clutched in my hand, walking my best friend home up the hill to the dead end because playtime was long over. Magical snowy winter days and school closures, black bouncy inner tubes swooshing down snow-covered hills, fruit trees exploding in spring blossoms, fragrant knockout roses lining the driveway, summer ripe red raspberries and blackberry bushes, waves drumming on barnacle encrusted beach rocks, rain drizzling on welcoming leaves, sea air filling my hungry lungs, my heart and mind with childhood happiness, love, peace, and contentment that have lasted half a century when I come home. Thank you. You know, growing up, we really should have been better fishermen than we were. Sometimes our boat motor wouldn't start, so that was one excuse. But we often did catch cod. So my next poem is about fishing, and you'll find out what we enjoyed most about fishing with our dad. So, under the weeping willow. Under the weeping willow drip long green leaves, lazily stroking the mossy grass, cut by my grandfather's wooden hand-pushed lawnmower. Blades spin, click, 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 click. Grass flies up in green confetti clouds, filling the air with the familiar sweet scent and musical sounds of summer. 4 long fishing poles lay discarded on the grass. Gentle bursts of fresh sea air tickle and play with the leaves overhead. 3 little siblings huddle next to their daddy, kneeling on the grass, staring wide-eyed at 2 large black eyes staring back, dead but watchful, awaiting their fate on a wooden cutting board, a sharpened knife poised to slice open the pale, fleshy stomachs of 2 brown speckled Pacific codfish, auburn scales glistening in the sun. 3 little voices gasp, ah, as daddy's knife slices through the soft underbellies. Entrails spill out gruesomely. 6 little green eyes squeeze shut, then squint open, afraid to miss the horrible contents of the fish. A knife is offered to whomever wants to pop the air sacs like bursting birthday balloons. My brother stabs twice. Pop, pop. Ooh, the delighted chorus sings. As curious seagulls fill the air, demanding one to another, come and see, hoping to benefit from the fishing trip. The tide accompanies with its rhythmic song like a steady drum. It's summer under the weeping willow. Just the other morning, I had my coffee cup and I was sitting watching the sun rise over the bay. And so this is for Mrs. Donnelly, for you, Susan. Morning on the bay. The coffee cup warms my chilled fingers. A blanket hugs my shoulders as the sun wakes over the bay. Ready for breakfast, the eagle soars and drops, dive bombing into the misty gray depths, surfacing with a silver salmon tight in its talons, returning to perch at the top of a tall pine. Herring balls disturb the water popping like raindrops, attracting flocks of seagulls breaking the morning peace. A silver-spotted harbor seal, like a playful pup, submerges to chase breakfast, reappearing to watch me watch him. When I first moved to Texas 30 some years ago, I asked somebody, so what do you do? And this man said, well, ma'am, I work with whales. And I said, oh, I love whales. Whales used to swim by my house once a year. No, ma'am, I work with whales. I said, I know, orcas. I love orcas. Ma'am, I work with whales in the ground, you know, oil whales. So being an ESL teacher, of course, it was hard for me to contain myself and say, you mean wells. So anyway, this is my, you get it, right? Okay. This is my tribute to whales. in the Pacific Northwest. Orcas. Great black sails rise from the deep, slicing through the water. We spy you rounding the corner from the narrows into Hale Passage. Neighbors sprint from their houses, congregating along the shore, eager to catch a glimpse of southern resident orcas. J-pod on a hunting mission, swimming, breaching, spy hopping, they are the yin and the yang of the deep. Legend tells that orcas protect those who travel away from home and will lead them back when the time comes. I hope it's true and they lead me back to the point. Okay. My brother and I just went for a long walk this morning, and whenever I would come home before my mom passed, she would always say, let's run down the beach and see the eagle that perches on the madrona tree. So my brother and I went down and looked for the eagle, and there it was on the madrona tree. And then we turned the other direction, walked back, and we heard this noise. Doo, doo. And there was a second eagle waiting on the other madrona tree for us. So we thought that was really special. So this is for my mother, where the eagle lives. She wanted to take me down the beach where the eagle lives on Point Fosdick, overlooking the Tacoma Narrows bridges. She visits him often. So proud to show me, she points to his perch high up on a madrona branch overhanging the beach. She giggles because there he is. Isn't he wonderful? He's waiting for her, sitting statuesque, watching us below as we observe him above. I will remember the spot. I should have known by the bleached bones of fish and assorted mammals discarded in the sand below, a little graveyard of beach creatures. I will remember next time to look for you when she is gone. She will be pleased that each time I walk down the beach to the point, I find you and I find her again. Thank you. I brought this. Anybody know what this is? This is a Lewis moon snail. And very, very interesting shape. So I'm going to read moon snails. My dad and I like to go looking for moon snails on a low tide. So this is for my dad. Moon snails. We used to find moon snails, Lewis's moon snails, smooth, white, and round like a small breast. It's rare to find a perfect full moon snail. The moon snail lays her eggs in a collar of sand scattered at low tide. Millions of tiny eggs mix with sand grains, forming a perfect shirt collar. Eggs later hatch and swim away. We'd gather them up, wear them around our necks, discarding them to dry in the sun, oblivious to their importance on the beach. I've only found 2 perfect moon snails. One I gave away with a piece of my heart to a sweet 16 first love. I wonder if he still has it and thinks fondly of me. The second I hold dearer because it reminds me of my love for my daddy, who used to enjoy walking the beach, searching for moon snails. I think I'll skip to the end. The last one is called The Beach Hasn't Changed. The beach hasn't changed. Doesn't know you are gone, that only your spirit hovers silently over the rocks. You strolled down the beach over crushed seashells, joyously accompanied by 3 little dachshunds, tails wagging and bottoms shimmying. Your eyes scan the bay for large dog-like heads and ample behinds of sea lions diving for salmon. You bent and picked up smooth, flat rocks, skipped a rock or 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and felt like a kid again. You waved to the old neighbors, still inhabiting their original beach cottages, and new neighbors in houses too large rebuilt on the beach. No, the beach hasn't changed. The glassy surface still holds unseen secrets deep below the drop-off. Heavy barnacle-covered stones, when upturned, still hold a place for crabs, periwinkles, and lippets to hide. The heron stands motionless at the shore, and the eagle awaits on the madrona, turning his head ever so slowly. Maybe he's looking for you, as I do, walking down the beach in quiet reflection, accompanied by your spirit. That's all. Thank you.
Well, Lauri, that was wonderful. I haven't been to Gig Harbor, but it sounds like a wonderful place to grow up. And I can tell how much these poems are touching the people you know and who have lived there. Yeah, I love the opening poem, the coming home poem. The way you use each landmark, and it reminds me of, like, when I was a little girl going to visiting my grandparents, and you're in the long car ride, but then you're getting closer and you see that church, you see that tree, you stop at that stop sign, and you're just getting all those butterflies in your stomach because you're excited because you're almost there. And that poem, even though it's about your journey, took me to that place in my childhood. And that was really fun.
Oh,
So I really want to thank you for sharing the poems of home with all of us today. It was really a real treat.
You're so welcome. Thank you all.
So our next featured poet is Peter Kaufmann, the author of The Round Whisper of No Moon, which weaves imagery and story gathered over 20 years of migrating between the wilds of Alaska and the densely populated cities in Southeast Asia. Peter has been a biologist, builder, salmon fisherman, improv teacher, and performer. In 1997, he volunteered to teach in Vietnam for 1 year. Well, that year grew into 20. Spending summers in Alaska and three seasons living and working in Asia, he helped communities voice their stories through drama, film, radio, television, and museum exhibitions. His poems have placed in statewide contests in Alaska, have appeared in Cirque magazine, and twice been chosen for National Poetry Month. Please welcome Peter Kaufmann.
Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, Robert and Poetry Box for this event and bringing my manuscript to book form. And thanks to all of you for taking time out on a Saturday afternoon to come and listen to poetry. I'm going to start with the Mary Oliver poem that I came across a few weeks ago, and it just seems pertinent to poetry to me. It's called 3 Things to Remember. As long as you're dancing, you can break the rules. Sometimes breaking the rules is just extending the rules. Sometimes there are no rules. As Shawn pointed out, I've had a wildly varied life, lots of opportunities, and all of it has fed my poems. I just wanted to say about poetry or poems, writing poems, is my wife, Wendy Erd, the poet herself, says that the best poems don't come from you, but come through you. So it's like you're giving birth to them. You're not controlling what you write, but letting the poem write itself. What Kim Stafford calls becoming the scribe, I think is a great description, where your job is to just pay attention, to listen, to accept what comes your way without judgment. And then you can have judgment later when you deal with it. And I work a lot from first lines. Wendy and I walk around our neighborhood in Alaska quite a bit, and we're constantly telling each other, that's a good first line. That's a good first line. And hopefully you have a pen, a pencil, and a piece of paper, and you're not digging under your car seat for a broken pencil scrap and tearing a piece off a cardboard box that you got from the grocery store. I have an envelope full of first lines, which probably will never get used. I live on a bay, Ketchimak Bay in Alaska, and this first poem came when I was skipping across to get a massage at a wilderness day spa. And I was laying there getting the massage, and this just came almost the way it's written. The black line. It could have been something like that erratic black line on the water that flew off in the grace of birds as we got close. Or maybe the way I said yes as you waved your arms, lost in ideas. Or one time when you threw my camping spoon in the creek where we spent the night and I had to go after it. Each day begins the sea with all its green calmness and hungry waves, the sweetness, the anger. It could go something like this: a gray boat, streaming corks and net, no one else there, rock and tree rising toward heaven, man on deck, leaning into the day. Or it could be the person, an orderly closing circle, the moment when there is no net left, only fish gasping. Today is that sea, that net, those fish, those men. Tomorrow is the clinging fog, yesterday, a black line on the water. While we're on the subject of massage, the second poem, a little background is living in Southeast Asia can be a hassle. It can be wonderful living overseas, and it can be a hassle, particularly on a very hot, very humid day. And what I found to help relieve my stress was to go get my hair washed at a little street side hair wash place. So this follows the massage poem because it came to me after a day in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, working at the Russian market, walking on the river. And it also came out almost in one piece, the way it is. And I'm a little side note, I think it's one of my favorite poems. If you can have a favorite of your own, I don't know if that's allowed or not. It's called The Leaf Player. For a last meal, wash my hair. Let me live that moment on the other side of skin, intentioned fingers, eyes closed, strange language murmuring at the edges. The blind man plays his story. Too much music coming from just one leaf. Flute, horns, quiet strings. Sound lifting black tucks, white shirt from weathered hands. Walking stick, dirt brown clothes. If not robbed of sight, who would stop us like this, gifted among piled cloth, heat, the smell of drying fish? Our teachers change. The table we sit at alone, how a dropped stone lands, clay, wood, wild water, touch. Open your hands. The same ones fold the petals of a lotus, cup water, hold violence, place a leaf. Music, wings close, waves and sand, ionized air. Fire catches our eyes, and then it is gone. This next poem was from a trip to Bhutan that I took had writing workshops by Kim Stafford and Wendy Erd. It was a lot of fun. In Bhutan, there's the word in the poem Zong, P-Z-O-N-G, which is a monastery fortress. They're like on provincial level, they're huge, and they're half administration, government administration, and half Buddhist administration. They divided into. Anyway, that's where this one was born. I guess. Who is lost? Between the whispering nuns and half a sun, will I find my brother in a smoke-filled sky? Who is the lost one? The one in silence or the one in sound? Shadow or body? Painted song or the space it leaves for the sky? Where two rivers converge, a texture of contradictions, each stone handled many times before it finds its place in the wall. In a time of widening roads, thoughts pushed over the edge, thin song on wind, we are all seekers for an angle of repose. Can I learn to see beyond his memory slipping away? Touch relegated to history. Walk slowly when the air is thin. Hold a corner on pages already read. Let the crows call you on. And while we're speaking of crows, I have somebody who'd like to say hello. All right, that's enough. This is called As the Crow Flies. All that black and shiny knowing that the shortest distance between 2 points is never a straight line. From the first beat of heart to the stillness of last breath, laughter, tears, a slow blink apart. The spiral curl of ammonite emerges from crumbling bluff. Its print, once soft, dissolved into stone. Who walks straight when there is so much to go around, when the only piece of black in a blue, blue sky folds its wings and drops, catching itself just before it hits the ground? This next one will stay in Alaska. Sometimes poems stay in one place with me, sometimes they like to travel. And I don't usually write from a prompt, but I gave myself a prompt and this is what came out. Recipe for a May evening in Alaska. Start with a back road, add late evening light, toss with backlit young birch leaves, add a yearling moose, unafraid, grazing on the shoulder. Mix in 2 rabbits, a zigzag mating chase, a lumbering porcupine. Fill the air with songbirds, a few distant cranes, the rise and fall of whistling snipe wings. Set your course for a river and the first king salmon of the year. Let the road wander on curves, past occasional homestead sprawls. Roll down the window, spiced with balsam of cottonwood. Set the table with torn paper clouds, 4 silhouette volcanoes. Invite some friends, a lover. Finish in Adirondack chairs on the porch. Serve with the good Zinfandel. This poem is named Unspoken. For a split second, it broke my heart. The girl with the tray of lighters and pens for sale, swallowed by the streets of Hanoi. And then there are the mics, one of stone and garden, one with an Arabic prayer on his lips, secrets replacing their lives, one cell at a time. There is so much unspoken that rustles our leaves. The way the girl walked right into her story became the madam, reaching over and one by one, unbuttoning the blouse of the sex worker, undoing the bra for the policeman. See what fine breasts she has. Who is responsible? These stories mix blood, flood dreams, drive us to seek a quiet table alone. Water horses galloping our river pastures, clearly visible, clearly horses, clearly water, heads back before they seek their own level. It's like that time the road became too difficult and we turned back. Only the young went on. And then on a corner where the road fell away to a river with a rusty truck in the middle, flanked by cottonwoods, leaves, 1,000 hands turning, a man alone, all caresses, slowly lifting and turning the air, and beyond the valley opening up into mountains, swallows dipping and rising in a charcoal sketch of rain. And I was going to time myself, but I forgot. So this is my last poem. And I thought would change the pace a little bit. Those of us who live on the West Coast, maybe when you were kids, there weren't Canadian geese on every ball field and piece of spare grass. But that's the way it was. I never saw a Canadian goose when I was a kid. But now, any place, any grass, and you got to watch where you walk. Game on. Goose prints on the mound. Way too many left fielders, all out of position. Not a mid in sight. It's like they don't even know there's a game on. The stands are empty. The crowd hushed. Bottom of the ninth. No one on. No outs. No score. The bullpen on its feet. Hey, batter, batter. Wouldn't that second baseman look good on a platter? Thanksgiving. Chestnut stuffing. A nice Chardonnay. Isn't it great to all be together? Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I tell you, the poems in this entire collection are they're breathtaking. The way you weave your memories of each place with all the stories of the people you've encountered through your travels, it's really quite lovely. And nature is just this beautiful backdrop to all of it. And it's just exquisite. So thank you so much for sharing these poems with us today, Peter. It's a real treat. Okay, well, our final poet this evening is Leanne Grabel, author of My Husband's Eyebrows, which is a fun, full-colored illustrated chapbook celebrating her long marriage, the good, the bad, and most definitely the humorous side of a life shared. Leanne is a writer, illustrator, and performer in love with mixing genres and collaborating with other artists. She has written and produced numerous multimedia shows, including The Lighter Side of Chronic Depression and Anger, the musical. Her graphic novel, Brontosaurus Illustrated, was published earlier this year by the Opiate Books. Leanne is the 2020 recipient of the Bread and Roses Award for her contribution to women's literature in the Pacific Northwest. Please welcome Leanne Grabel.
Thank you. Thank you, Shawn and Robert, for putting out this book. And thank you, Steve, who's over here on the couch, for inspiring it. And by the way, people are always worried that I share too much about Steve in my work, but he reads everything and he's fine. So nobody has to worry about that. And also I noticed that Barbara Lamorticella is here and she helped me arrange this collection. So thank you, Barbara. First poem is Exactly. And actually this is, I think it's between flash memoir and prose poetry more than it is straight poetry. It starts with an epigraph by Charles Bukowski. Quote, "You settle upon the knobs on the dresser drawer. You decide that the secret is there." I feel an epiphany coming on, as if it's right around the corner, as if I'm just about to turn and see a paperclip or a couch cushion or a fried egg, and I will know something. I feel as if a light is going to fall upon a dense and crotchety shadow. I'll feel a warmth in my shoulders and behind my ears, a slight shuffling in my brain as if a chair moved in my medulla oblongata. It might happen any minute. I'll find a billfold full of hundreds and antidotes, and I will take it. Wouldn't you? And I will tell him, wouldn't you? At first I didn't think I would. I mean, tell him, but I would. And he'll probably say, what? Absent-mindedly, and I'll get irritated that he isn't more enthusiastic. Honey. The night I met my husband, he was wearing an enormous sweater with brown buttons like mini buns. He also had a girlfriend on his arm like an alligator purse. I noticed immediately she was the opposite of me. She was naturally blonde, naturally thin, and talkative. Plus she had on high heels and a powder blue sweater. I was just back from my hometown in California, where I had been watching my grandmother die and trying to mend a cracked heart. The night I met my husband, I was wearing tight heart, tight spine, tight jeans, tight tank top. My husband started following me around, room to room, after his girlfriend left. He kept telling me things. Love at first sight, he said with his big white teeth like chiclets, and then he disappeared for a month. Thanks for your patience and understanding, he said before he left. Impulsive, I didn't really practice or even understand patience, but I waited. We finally made love on a beautiful tropical overstuffed couch in the middle of my new rental room in a large Victorian house. The couch was periwinkle blue chintz with splashes of white irises. The room had a balcony ringed by old hawthorns that stood there like sage uncles. The love was honey. No, it was the taste of honey, the look of honey. No, it was like bathing in warmed honey, golden, thick, sweet. I made these layered mammalian sounds with panache. I went from kitten to bobcat to tiger. I remember exactly how my teeth shimmied, how my paws buzzed, my feet. It was about a year later when the judges arrived and took their permanent seats in my occipital court. They tried to ruin everything with their snotty little number cards. Now 38 years have gone by. My husband and I sit on our old brown couch like couch pillows. We could probably feed the hungry of a small nation with all the crumbs beneath the cushions. Somebody should vacuum. Thank you. The question of sobbing and shitting. When Bailey, my last dog, died, my husband sobbed in my arms. He rocked and shook, full body. I had never seen this before. In 38 years, I'd seen only a handful of tears, usually after a documentary about a self-destructive artistic genius like Jean-Michel Basquiat or Miles Davis. But when Bailey died, my husband shook and shivered. I shook and shivered too, but only 4 times, and always after he left for work. I know this is not about me. I know my husband keeps secrets. I'm glad, I think. I don't want to know what he does every minute or what he keeps hidden in the back of his socks drawer. And I don't want to see him shit. Of course, I've caught a hooded glance or two in passing over the years, but not on purpose. In the end, I do not think I can wipe his ass. Candy. My husband, it's weird to say husband so many times. It took me 20 years to even be able to say the word, but here we go. My husband is a master of mimicry. He can imitate any sound that he hears. He can do double sounds, triple sounds. He layers accents, animals, machinery, technology. One day we were walking along the river and he mimicked a Polish Jew with a missing tooth selling hot dogs at a Yankees game. Then over coffee he mimicked a Frenchman with a lisp, a jaw click, and a Chinese accent. I laughed so hard I felt 3. Last month he mimicked radio static. Masterfully. It was exact, hilarious. It's our new song, I said, and we laughed and laughed. I am grateful for my husband's talents. He could probably mimic the sound of gratitude, but what is the sound of gratitude? A sibilant whoosh, a muffled whoopee behind a handkerchief? Mimicry is no talent of mine. My lips are slow moving, the only part of me that is, and I often don't listen well, as if my ears just get up and go inside. But when my husband mimics perfectly and we laugh like that, like we're 3 or 11 or even 40, that is the cream in the center of the bonbon, and candy is absolutely necessary. Asparagus tips. I'm just barreling right through these. So my husband started adding asparagus tips to our egg scrambles after 35 years of weekly egg scrambles without them. That's like 1,800 egg scrambles and 0 asparagus tips until now. Why? I'd been hoping he would change, of course, but I had no idea the change was going to come and that it would be culinary. Now there are families of headless asparagus in the fridge, green skinny torsos in brown paper pencil skirts. Last week he discovered the neck of the asparagus is as good as the head when sautéed with garlic and ghee. It might even be better, more texture and grit, less goosh. May that be said of my husband. Who's coughing over there? All right, bald. He is bald. You need to know this. My husband always says yes. He used to drive carpools, go to soccer games in the rain, basketball games in small muggy gyms with everybody yelling, Chuck E. Cheese birthday parties. He chaperoned long weeks at outdoor school, class trips to the planetariums and aquariums, and he took our children school shopping the night before the first day of school when the chaos was like being inside a blender. Now he goes grocery shopping, takes care of the cast iron pans, empties the dishwasher, carries the heavy stuff. That my husband always says yes is one of the main reasons I married him. And I'm sure it's why our daughters are so generous. In my family, generosity was a foreign idea. Instead, we were pitted against each other, competing, and we were stingy. My husband doesn't have a competitive nor stingy cell in his body, except perhaps the cells on his head. His hair follicles would rather die than share space with anything. Speaking of crows, millionth crow poem. I fear birds. To be frank, I fear in general. Fear is how I roll. So when hundreds of crows converged upon our lawn, our house, our trees, the block, I feared. So much flapping and squawking, the numbers were frightening, Hitchcockian. It had to be bad. What's up with the crows? I yelled at my husband. Crows were pouring from the pallor in inky torrents. Maybe they're here to warn us, I said. Maybe they're kind. Maybe they like us. Maybe there's nothing to fear. It was such a generous assumption on my part, like when I decided cows might be kind, so there was no mad cow disease in every bit of beef that I ate. Every branch, every post, every wire was beaded with crows. Crows like gems, like jewels, black sapphires, ebon diamonds. See, my New Year's resolution was to be more generous. Crows like gems, like jewels, is the most generous line I have ever written. 2 more. Barbarians. In Bruegel's painting of Icarus and human indifference, and Auden's poem about Bruegel's painting of Icarus and human indifference, a boy falls from the sky, but nobody notices. The ships sail by without a blip or a bump. The dogs graze and forage, wiggle and bark. The torturer's horse scratches his ass against rough trunks. In the more recent era of the ugly man and human indifference, there was a man in a suit who was shouting lies and clowning, throwing money from the top of gold buildings. The gold turned out to be fake, and so did the money, yet the crowd below him kept grunting for more. There were fake 50s and 100s stuffed in the man's face. Fake 20s were falling from his pockets, but his fatness made it also confusing. Which bulge was which bulge? Was it fat or was it money? The man's words rubbed together. The friction sometimes gave them a shine, like an old suit, but they could look glossy like marbles when the sun shone. They caught the eye as if they were worth something, but they weren't worth a damn. What if our country falls from the sky and nobody notices but the crows? I asked my husband while we were sitting on the couch. What if the crows come together with their flapping and cawing and cover everything like a thick moss or a fungus, like now? Is this a warning? What? He said. Disappointed, I returned to look for barbarians. I am always looking for barbarians. I don't think there are any on my block, and luckily, my husband is not a barbarian. And the final one, the title poem, which I was going to do with keyboard and Steve doing backup, but too much now. Okay, my husband's eyebrows. My husband's eyebrows became electrified in Costa Rica. Anarchistic caterpillars with mohawks, punks. We called them Sid Vicious throughout the vacation, and we laughed every single time. My little granddaughter toddled around in 2 large flippers. She reminded me of Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate, which I saw 12 times. I laughed every single time, and then I nuzzled her. We all nuzzled her. What a tonic. My daughters and I wore our Polish thighs like trees. They wore theirs with pride, like oaks or redwoods. I wrapped mine in towels. I had decades of experience showing shame, like a peasant or a shrub. The native men wore their shirts unbuttoned. Their bellies bragged, and I liked it, surprisingly, maybe because they weren't that handsome and they weren't trying to be handsome. The water in Costa Rica was perfect. There was no difference between water and body and air, not a flinch, not a shiver. We just lolled in infinity pools, drinking pina coladas with bright fans of pineapple like jeweled barrettes. We kicked our legs, plopped on underwater stools made of volcanic stone. At breakfast, white-faced monkeys like jesters swung above us. They tried hard to entertain us. They swooped low and picked up the sugar bowls, then flaunted their booty. Sugar packets fanned out like large paper dentures. Sugar packets dangled from their ironic smiles. One monkey wore a bowl on its head. Then he dropped all the Splenda on our heads, but only the Splenda. I thought I looked great in Costa Rica, especially for my age. But then I saw the photographs. I looked like a peasant from Minsk among Swedes. I was shorter than the others, squatter than the others. My body looked like a potato, my hair like a riot. But for Minsk, I thought I had a singular style. At least that is what I told myself for consolation. And anyway, this is a poem about my husband's eyebrows. It's not about me. Thank you.
Oh, gee, Leanne, this book is so much fun. I think it was Pauline Peterson who called these poems full spectrum marital truths that are as irresistible as the cream in the center of a bonbon. And I couldn't agree more. And then, you've got these, I can't wait for you guys to actually see the book because it's just filled with all these fanatical, exuberant illustrations to go with each of these poems. It's a real treat. So I want to thank you, Leanne, for entertaining us today. It was wonderful.
Steve stayed awake.
Oh, that's good. So let's have a giant round of applause for all of our readers today. And thank you, our audience, for joining us for another edition of the Poetry Box Live. It just means the world to us that you joined us here on Zoom to celebrate their poetry. Next month, our show will be on Saturday, November 12th at 4 p.m. Pacific, and we will be celebrating the launch of our 12th edition of the Poeming Pigeon, with about 25 poets from all over the globe reading their work from the new anthology. Plus, we will also be sharing some of the beautiful artwork from the book, so you don't want to miss that one. To keep up to date on upcoming shows, new releases, and submission opportunities, please subscribe to our newsletter by going to thepoetrybox.com, where you'll find a sign-up form at the bottom of each webpage. And speaking of submission opportunities, we are currently open for submissions of poetry and visual art for our 13th issue of the Poeming Pigeon. So you can go to our website and just click on the Poeming Pigeon at the top menu and you can get all the details. Thanks again for joining us today. We look forward to sharing more poetry with you next month on the Poetry Box Live.